Become aware of your own presence. Try to observe. This is something that cannot be described. This is something that can only be experienced directly. Every experience will be different. So bring your awareness back to the presence, the mysterious presence that hovers within your body. This is where all the secrets are written, in this relationship between the presence and the vessel. This relationship is at the base of every experience. So return to observing this relationship. This relationship reaches across worlds, dimensions beyond what we can count. It has processes, bigger processes that include smaller processes, and like that, a hierarchy. Everything in the physical represents a spiritual movement. And yet all this, so subtle, so peaceful, so perfect, that it doesn't make a sound. What's happening? If you ask the presence, it would say nothing. Trillions of things are happening before you can say nothing. And that's just inside of the human body. Infinite things are happening in order for the human body to have a place where to exist and to have the material and the information it needs to do so. And so what we're observing from within the presence is a result of an infinite number of processes, all interconnected in order to create this perfect nothing. So come back to that nothing and find how much is happening there. First, in your own vibrations that you're creating from within, sensations, emotions, thoughts. And beneath that noise, the realities that together create the lens through which you perceive. Bring your awareness to your presence. In other words, become aware that you are the presence. You have no place in the body. There's no individual point that creates the projection of you. There are many. Everything together. And then there is someone that wasn't before. That someone is you. If anything is not the way that it should be, and then the you that is now finds itself in a different location, not in the projection of the mind. So this presence is a result of what the body is inviting. All the organs together are inviting a presence. And then comes the result. And we are the result. The conscious one, the awareness that is the result of the invitation. And then we leave a reaction that becomes the next invitation. Every awareness that comes into the presence leaves its mark on the body. And then the body invites a new presence. And then that presence leaves its mark. And so it goes in a cycle. This presence has a lot more freedom than it is aware that it has. Because when the presence comes into the body, it's confined by the information that was written into the body previously by a previous presence. If the body is experiencing knowledge through the mind, if the experience is intellectual, all the presence can know is what the mind has previously perceived. But the presence itself, it knows more than the mind knows. The mind knows information that came in through the senses, that were processed through awareness. The presence knows all the organs and their condition because the presence is a result of all of them together. So within its nature it knows. Within the mind it doesn't know. Within its nature it's light. In the mind it's experienced as darkness. It's the thought that's creating the darkness, not the one living in that thought. When the perception is wrong, the presence loses access to itself because it believes the mind. It trusts what the intellect is saying based on information. But it loses access to its natural safety. The safety of knowing because it is itself. And that's enough. So the goal of every presence is to leave the body in a condition where the future presence can become even more intimate, can become even more real with what is happening within the body. So that happens by improving the information, but also improving the circumstances, improving the condition of the body. So then it becomes easier for the presence to digest the reality of the body, to grow enough, to mature enough, to be able to comprehend accurately what is happening within the organs. What are the reactions to reality that are taking place within it? This is the only source of real information. This is real time, constantly flowing through us. Every detail of what's happening inside of us is being reported somewhere to someone. And if that's not us, then we're not aware of what's happening in our own life. Because everything that's happening outside is just a mirror. Where we actually feel it is inside. So inside is where the real story is taking place. And the presence needs to understand the real story. The external story is impossible to comprehend. Nobody has comprehended the external story. The internal story, there are different levels of achievement. Many have gotten very far. Because that story is you. That story creates you. That story makes your story. The better you know how to handle that, the better you know how to regulate your biology, the better the story you can make for yourself, and for the people around you, and for humanity. The only real obstacle we have is if we're not in control of our biology. Because then there's nothing anybody can do that's going to allow us to somehow compensate for that weakness. That's between us and the Creator. And so the right presence is the one that is leading the body towards internal perfection. Internal perfection means that all the organs are balanced. The reactions to what's taking place are healthy and directed at what's real to the organism, not what's imagined. And then the future presence can be from a higher dimension, because if the body is prepared, if there is balance and regulation, then we can realize a deeper truth. If the body is not functioning properly, if our attention span is not long enough, then we can't realize the deeper truth. The deeper truth is where we belong. We have to go deeper in order to find ourselves. And so we have to learn how to regulate in order to be ourselves. And this is at the source of the relationship between the presence and the vessel. When that relationship is healed, then all the relationships outside can be healed. Any weakness in that relationship, and all the relationships outside are going to suffer as a result. So return to realizing your presence. It's always there, and therefore it's so invisible. But not only is it important, in many ways, it's everything. It's the place where everything is taking place. Whether we're observing through our eyes or we're listening through our ears, where the reality is taking place is inside of our body. That place is always there, and that place is way too easily ignored. That place is the place that runs, manages, and directs all other places. And even that place, even in the presence, is still not the root of who we are. This is just closer to the root of who we are than the body. The root is even beyond presence. Presence is within the awareness. The body is within the collective awareness. And that's why we can perceive it with the individual awareness. And so the presence is the lens through which someone who is beyond presence is viewing the vessel and the reality that is perceived by the vessel through the senses. The external senses, the five senses, and the internal senses, the senses that relate to sensation, emotion, and thought. All these are senses. They're spiritual senses. Spiritual meaning that they relate directly to perception and experience. They relate directly to how the air that we breathe is going to be interpreted by the organism. And then what kind of energy are we going to produce in that air before we exhale? So the presence is what's coming in and out of the body through the breath. The one that's listening to me now entered the body just a little while before and made its way through the lungs, heart, up to the brain, and here we are, perception. And then it moves on and it gets exhaled. And then that presence has been released. And so the presence lives in the air, and that's why it's called ruach. Ruach also meaning spirit. Remember yourself as a spirit, because that's what you've always been. And realize that this vessel is negotiable. Negotiate for yourself a good vessel. Nothing is written in stone. Everything is developed by you. Everything has your attributes and your behaviors within their DNA. As you're creating each cell, you're duplicating yourself in each cell. You're creating yourself in many different forms, just like the Creator created Himself in many different forms. And then there's a collective, which is the body, which is many used together. And all of them can be negotiated with. Every function of every organ can be increased or decreased based on the presence and its desire. And we do this constantly. We're just not methodical, we're not aware, but we're constantly negotiating with ourselves and with others, and essentially we're negotiating with organs. We're changing their functions. We're telling them what to do and what not to do. And sometimes we're giving conflicting instructions. Sometimes there's conflict between the organs. That all relates to the presence and the wisdom that it has to know how to interact with the vessel. So unite with your presence and find peace within the vessel. Allow, release, relax. Let the vessel rest so that a better you can appear in your place.